Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Saturday, November 30th. Hopefully everybody's having a good day so far today. Hopefully everybody enjoyed their Thanksgiving. We are just a little over 24 hours away from the New York Jets Week 13 matchup against the Seattle Seahawks tomorrow afternoon out at MetLife Stadium. Today, we are going to be previewing all angles of this Week 13 showdown as the New York Jets get set to take on the NFC West leading 6-5 Seattle Seahawks. As always, we will break down some matchups. We'll get into the Jets offense versus Seahawks defense, all that good stuff. As always, though, before we begin here on episode 436 of the In the Trenches with Gang Green podcast, let's tell you about our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS, America's favorite online sportsbook. Let's take a look here at the New York Jets remaining schedule. And the question that is going to be asked is, how many games do you think the Jets will win here down this final 6-game stretch? Of course, Seattle tomorrow, then back-to-back road games in Florida against the Dolphins and the Jags, then back home against the Rams, road game up in Buffalo, and then back home against the Dolphins to close out what has been a miserable 2024 season. What does it have in store through the final 6 games? If you want to bet on the New York Jets win total the rest of the way, use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign-up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. You're looking to get to the game tomorrow. You're looking to get to any sporting event, NBA, NHL, college, whatever. Looking to go out to a play, a concert, a show, you name it. Use my promo code BUBSONSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. So take your total off your first ever purchase at SeatGeek, subtract 20, and that's the price you'll pay with my promo code BUBSONSPORTS. Definitely check them out. And, of course, our friends over at Huga House. If you want any of their awesome collection of hats, use promo code BUBS for 15% off any purchase at checkout. So here we are, Week 13, New York Jets off their bye week. You know, it's weird. It feels like the Jets played last week with all the news that came out about them. The New York Jets are one of the only teams in the NFL that can still find a way to be a lead story, even with even being on their bye week. They still find a way to be a lead story. So here we are, fresh off the bye. New York Jets come into this game 3-8. They are 2-3 at home. Seahawks come into this game 6-5. They are 3-1 on the road. 1 Eastern tomorrow on Fox. The odds for this one: Seattle comes into this game a small 1-point favorite. Over under is set at 42.5. Some ESPN analytics matchup predictors giving the Jets a 54.2% chance of winning this game and giving the Seahawks a 45.5% chance of winning this game. So some of the odds actually favor the Jets here over the Seahawks, who are coming off a massive win against the Arizona Cardinals. They've got the Cardinals again next week, got to fly out east. I could definitely understand some of that because you can sort of understand a potential trap game scenario here for the Seahawks. But let's be honest here, the way the Jets are playing, I don't think it matters how far you're traveling. I don't think it matters who you're playing the week prior, who you're playing the week after. Whatever situation you're in as the opposing team, you should be able to go into MetLife and beat them up pretty good with the way this team's playing and all the outside noise that's been a distraction this season. And that's where we'll start here. Obviously, as always, we'll get into the offense and we'll get into the defense and all that stuff, matchups to watch, just some things like that. But, you know, look, this is one of these games where you're coming off the bye week. We know the Jets over the last couple of years have had struggles coming out of the bye week, so that's certainly something to look for. When you look at the Jets angle here, you're looking at a team that has had so many struggles this season. You're 3-8 on the year. If you're a Jet fan, you kind of wish you could just press a button and fast forward to January, fast forward to when we know our next head coach and general manager, who they will be, because these next 6 games are pretty much meaningless. You know, I think Rodgers at this point is playing for his job, playing for his 2025 future, not just with the Jets, but potentially with any team in the NFL. You look at him right now, if he plays well down the stretch, maybe the Jets don't bring him back, but then another team will be interested. If he plays bad down the stretch, you definitely know the Jets aren't bringing him back. And there's a good chance maybe nobody else will want him with the way it went here over the last 2 years with the torn Achilles, a losing season, general manager, head coach fired mid-year, all that stuff. So, and it's going to be interesting, too, just to see how this team comes out. You know, you've heard all these rumors. There's so much outside noise. It has all crept into the building. There's been reports that the players, as much as they will stand in front of the podium and stand in front of the microphones and tell you they're still focused and there's still good energy and all that stuff, because that's what coaches and players do. They try and make it seem like everything's okay. Meanwhile, it is really a raging fire that's burning within the walls of one Jets drive right now. But in terms of like how they come out in this game, it's going to be interesting because there's been many reports that a lot of guys have checked out. The players have checked out. You've got bombshell reports. You're not winning. You've got your general manager fired during the bye week. Head coach has already been fired. The interim's not working. So many problems, not many answers, so many questions that have to be asked, and we have to wait for those answers until these 6 games are up. And then, of course, from the Seattle perspective here, you're looking at a team that has just come off of a huge win against the Arizona Cardinals. They've now won back-to-back games in the division against San Fran and against Arizona. They had that stretch there where they were struggling, where they lost 5 of 6. McDonald was starting to get some criticism after that 3-0 start. They fell to 4-5 before their bye week, but coming out of the bye, they've been playing much better. And you look at their stretch, you look at their schedule down the stretch here, they've got a lot of tough matchups. They've got a lot of big matchups. This feels like a game just from a Seattle perspective that they have to get to 7-5 before they have to face teams like Green Bay, face Arizona again on the road, face Minnesota. They've got some really tough games coming up, so it'll be interesting to see how they come out in this one. As for the injury report in this game, for the New York Jets, out is Tyron Smith. He will miss this one. Good chance we probably saw Tyron Smith play his last game, his last snap as a New York Jet in that Arizona game. The injury, no sense really throwing him out there right now, especially if he's hurt for a 3-8 team, not necessary. And from a Olu perspective as well, I think now's the time, this point in the season. Let's see what you have in your 11th overall pick on Olu Fashanu, so he will get to start again. Tyron Smith is out in this one. Ulbricht's talked about that they are potentially exploring putting him on the IR, which will officially end his 2024 campaign. Questionable players in this one: Breece Hall dealing with a knee, Jake Hansen dealing with a hamstring, Xavier Newman dealing with a concussion, CJ Mosley dealing with a neck injury, Chuck Clark dealing with a shin. Now, I will say it is good to see Xavier Newman back, at least practicing. Obviously had the really scary injury, had to get taken off the field in Pittsburgh. So good to see that he's actually rebounding, bouncing back here from what was a really scary incident a couple weeks ago. Breece Hall, knee injury, ramped up towards the end of the week here, looking pretty good for tomorrow. So not too loaded of injury report. Hopefully some of those guys get in there. Chuck Clark's shin injury popped up late. As for Seattle, Uchenna Nwosu's dealing with a thigh, so he'll be out in this one. And Stone Forsythe is dealing with a hand. As for your questionable players for the Seahawks, A.J. Finley dealing with an ankle, and Brady Russell is dealing with a foot. So a pretty small report there for Seattle, relatively healthy coming into Sunday's matchup. So let's get into the Jets offense versus the Seahawks defense. As I mentioned, Rodgers will be the big headline. He will be the big story the next couple weeks, not because of playoff chances, not because of any of that, just because of the fact that these next 6 games could very well dictate his future, not only with the Jets, as I mentioned in the open, but his future in the NFL. He talked about on the Pat McAfee show this week that he denies all the reports that came out about him saying that he wants to play in 2025 and he wants to be with the Jets. He mentioned many times on McAfee that he's never told anybody that he wants to play in 2025. He says he's still undecided, but if he does want to play, the Jets would be his first option. So things will get really interesting. But from a Rodgers perspective this season, stats-wise, he's completed 241 of his 380 passes for a 63.4 completion percentage, 2,442 yards, 6.4 yards per completion, 17 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 88.9 passer rating, and a 51.4 QBR. We know what Rodgers has looked like this year, right? He's had some positives. He's had some good. He's had some bad. He does not look like the same player he once was. He's clearly playing hurt. We'll see what he looks like over these next 6 games. coming out of the bye week. Is he any healthier than he was? It felt like after that Texans game where they had the mini bye going into Arizona, the whole cayenne pepper and water, it felt like maybe he found something. Although I think that was maybe just us Jets fans trying to hang on to like our last little bit of hope that cayenne pepper and water could turn the season around, because Devontae Adams trade didn't. Hassan Reddick coming back didn't. The coach firing Saleh didn't. Everything we tried didn't. The whole cayenne pepper and water thing, it felt like was our last hope to try and turn in what was already basically a lost season, even after that Texans Thursday night win before the Arizona debacle. So it'll be interesting to see how he comes out. Like, is he looking healthier? Do they stretch the field? Can they throw the ball deep? You know, they're 3-8. The team stinks. All I ask for is, we already know, all of us Jet fans, we're going to waste 3 hours tomorrow watching this game. It's a meaningless December game. I mean, how many times, how many years have we seen meaningless December football? December 1, the calendar will officially switch over at midnight tonight, and December will come around, and the New York Jets will be 3-8, and that's awful. At least if we're going to sit here and watch a 3-8 Jets team, can we see some shots downfield? Can we see some deep balls to Devontae? Can we see some deep balls to Garrett? You know, can we see some red zone success? Take some chances. You had a bye week. You've got to be a little bit healthier. You've got to feel a little bit refreshed. I know the lower half, he probably doesn't have the strength there. He feels like he's hesitant to really use his lower half and throw the ball deep. It's been a 10-yard offense. Let's throw the ball deep. Let's take some chances. You're 3-8. You've got nothing to lose. Rodgers at this point's got nothing to lose. You're basically playing for your future right now. Go out there and show us some vintage moments. Take some chances. Make a game that's probably going to be incredibly hard to watch. Make it a little bit more watchable, if that makes sense. So that's where I stand with Rodgers. There's not much more that needs to be said about the offense. There really isn't. There's not. It's an offense this season, when we give you the rankings, they're the 28th ranked offense in football. They're 30th rushing offense. They're the 29th passing offense and the 27th scoring offense. Now, when you look at how that ranks against the Seahawks defense, there is some chances for this Seahawks defense for the Jets to maybe find some holes. Seahawks defense as a whole is 20th in the NFL, 22nd against the run, tied for 16th against the pass, tied for 13th in scoring defense. Now, the Seahawks defense has gotten better over the last couple weeks, and that showed in their 2 wins against San Fran and last week against the Cardinals. Now, another player that I think a lot of Jets fans want to see in this game, and it's going to be interesting to see how this matches up. The Seahawks defense this year has had some struggles, as I just mentioned. 22nd against the run. They're allowing 130.5 rush yards per game. They are right behind the Jets. Seahawks defense actually statistically is worse in stopping the run than the Jets are. Jets this season are 21st. Seahawks are 22nd. Now, the Jets run game wise has had some struggles, has had some times where there's been some inconsistency. I think the biggest thing with the Jets rushing offense this season has been they've been trailing in a lot of games. And even at times when the Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, it's working, even when that happens, they've tend to gone away from it. Hackett did, even Todd Downing has. They've got to stick with running the football. Again, a lot of times they've been down in games, so they've had to pass, right? They were getting crushed against Arizona. Late in the game against Indy, they had to try and make some plays. Even Houston in the second half, they had to start passing because the offense was so inept in the first half. They needed to start to make a comeback. So that's been part of it. But if there was a week here for Breece Hall, who's been playing much better, when you look at Breece Hall's numbers this season, 152 carries, 632 yards, 4.2 yards per attempt, 4 touchdowns. While that whole body of work isn't like crazy, eye-popping impressive, when you look at what he's done over the last couple weeks, it's been much, much better. He's averaged 5 yards per carry over the last 3 games. And really dating back to, and I said this, dating back to that Buffalo game where he had that huge run. He had his only 100-plus yard rushing game of the season in that one. That was coming off of back-to-back really, really bad weeks against Denver and Minnesota. It feels like ever since that game against Buffalo, something has clicked. Because even in that Pittsburgh game, when he wasn't much of a factor as a running back from a yards perspective, he did still score a touchdown rushing, but he also had a huge day as a pass catcher. And over the last couple weeks, you look at his yards per attempt, 5 against New England, 4.9 against Houston, 5.2 against Arizona, 4.9 against Indy. Much, much better finding his rhythm, finding his groove. This is a game where if I'm the Jets, I would love to see a game where Breece Hall has a 20 carry game. Let's make him like the Jets have no identity on offense. They don't have any identity as a team. They never have in a really long time, and they still don't now. Let's create an identity for a game. Force it, let's feed Breece. Give him the rock, take a lead, feed him. Right? That's what I think you've hopefully see. Right? Out of Breece. Again, these games are very hard to watch. Who's fun to watch? When Breece Hall's rolling, he's a very fun player to watch. When Garrett Wilson's rolling, he's a very fun player to watch. You know what's not fun to watch? Dump offs or back-to-back 1-yard passes on first and second down, or I don't know, a flat, throw in the flat on 3rd and 8 to Tyler Conklin that goes for 2 yards. That's not fun. There's nothing fun of that. That's painful. So let's see some Breece tomorrow. On the season, he's had 198 total touches. This is combined with his receiving and running stats. 198 total touches, 1,033 yards, 5.2 yards per attempt, and 6 touchdowns. So 1,000 yards total again for Breece here. And that number will probably only go up. Now, Garrett Wilson has had a really, really huge season for the Jets. Really, really big year. 69 receptions, 722 yards, 10.5 yards per reception, 5 touchdowns. Garrett Wilson, we're getting into another situation here where we're looking at another 1,000-yard campaign. That's where we're at with Garrett Wilson. He's 7th in the NFL in receptions, 13th in the NFL in yards, tied for 15th in the NFL in touchdowns. That's where we are with Garrett Wilson. And this is another year for him where even in a down year from an offensive perspective, he's still finding ways to dominate, still finding ways to get his hands all over the game. So he's another guy. And really the Jets receivers as a whole tomorrow, I'm looking at that can go out there and make some plays just as a whole. Like against this Seahawks secondary, it's going to be really interesting because they've got a lot of talent in that secondary. So you look at guys like Garrett, you look at Devontae. How do they line up tomorrow? That'll be interesting. But one of the only positives on this defense has been, or offense rather, has been Garrett Wilson. So see some of him tomorrow. And it's going to be a tough test against this Seattle secondary because they've got a lot of really good pieces in the secondary, right? You look at some of those pieces in the secondary, right? Kobe Bryant had the big pick 6 last week. He's done really well. You obviously got Tariq Woolen. You've got Devin Witherspoon. You've got kind of a 3-headed monster. You can even say some other depth pieces for them have made some really big plays. So it'll be interesting to see how Garrett lines up against them. And I'll also say this about the offense. Like some of the young players, you're at this point in the season, 3-8 on the year. At this point in the season, you start to look at the young guys. You start to look at like the building blocks, not including Garrett, not including Breece, guys that have already proven themselves, but more so guys like Olu. Maybe let's see a little bit more Corley, less Gibson tomorrow, even from a special teams perspective, less Gibson. He's been so disappointing this year. And more Braylon Allen. Let's see a little bit of Braylon Allen as well. He's kind of been non-existent. He had a strong start to the year and then like fell off. I think the carries haven't quite been there. So I think you look at him as a potential big week. Tittman as well. He's had a really solid year. Not really that you need to evaluate Tittman for the future. I think we know what to expect out of Tittman, but he's a guy to definitely look for. So those are just some of the things to look for on offense. Now moving on to the defensive side of the football. It's been bumpy. It's been a bumpy ride for this Jets defense. It's been rough. You look at the defense as a whole this season, 6th total defense in the NFL, 21st against the run, 2nd against the pass, 12th scoring defense. Now, I think something with this defense that is what makes it so frustrating is they've blown so many games. Whether it's last week against Indy, they blew it. Whether it's the Minnesota game, obviously they blew it. They were awful all game against Arizona. They let James Conner run all over them. This is a game for this Jets defense that they've got some opportunities potentially here. And I think you look at Geno this season as a whole, 280 completions on 405 attempts, 69.1% completion percentage, 3,035 yards, 7.5 yards per completion, 12 touchdowns, 12 picks, 88.5 passer rating, 54.4 QBR. Look, like I said, we're all so dejected as Jet fans. I mean, even just you have like no excitement going into these games right now. You just don't. But one thing you want to see in maybe some of these games, rooting for wins, rooting for losses, wherever you are as a fan, like you want to see, let's see some turnovers tomorrow. That's where I really want to start. This Jets defense does not force turnovers. They don't. They just don't do it. And that's been the case all year, whether it's recovering fumbles, forcing fumbles, whatever. They do not force turnovers, and especially interceptions. And this is a game where I look at this Jets defense and say, is it hard to ask for an interception? You know, Sauce Gardner, Ahmad Gardner, because I don't think he deserves to be called Sauce with the way he's been playing this season. Is it that hard to ask Sauce to go out there tomorrow? Ahmad, whatever the heck you want to call him. I'm so used to calling him Sauce, I'm not going to call him Ahmad enough. I'm going to keep calling him Sauce because the mod just doesn't pop in my head. But you get who I'm talking about. He hasn't had a pick since the Buffalo game 2 years ago, week 9, where they went to 6-3. Zach Wilson, we still thought Zach Wilson was manageable. That was that time, 2022. I was in the building for that game. And the reason why I'm talking so much about turnovers here is this is a Seahawks team that has thrown a ton of interceptions. Geno Smith, I just read you the numbers. 12 interceptions on the season. 12 picks on the year. Now, when you look at the Seahawks turnovers compared to the Jets, Seahawks this year have 12 picks. That's tied for first in the NFL. Tied for most in the NFL, really. And they have a -6 turnover differential. That's 25th in football. The Jets, on the other hand, have only had 2 interceptions. Both, by the way, and this is what's crazy, not DJ Reed. DJ Reed's been great, but not DJ Reed. He doesn't have the interceptions. Not Michael Carter. The 2 interceptions this year for the New York Jets are Brandon Eccles, a backup cornerback. Really, the 4th corner on this team has 2 interceptions. That's it. And the Jets have a 9, and their only 2 interceptions are tied for 31st. They have the 2nd least interceptions in the NFL, and their -3 turnover differential is 22nd in football. I mean, that is brutal. Brutal. So this is a game I look for with the Jets as a game similar to last week, right? Flacco, Richardson both had a ton of turnover problems. But this is a game similar to last week where I look at it and say, they've got to force a couple turnovers. Let's see a couple turnovers. Win, lose, whatever happens, to make it a more enjoyable viewer experience. Like I said, take some deep shots. Let's feed Brees a ton. Let's take some chances. You're 3-8. None of this really matters. This is all meaningless football. Tomorrow, let's force a turnover. Let's get an interception. When's the last time this team has had a game where they dominated the turnover battle and forced 3 turnovers? It's been a minute. And Seattle's the perfect opportunity. So that's where I wanted to start with the defense. In terms of Geno, obviously he's done a lot of really good things this year. I think what makes Geno and the Seahawks offense so dangerous is just their ability with the receiving core that they have. They have a 3-headed monster at receiver. JSN, DK Metcalf, and Tyler Lockett, who, while he still is up there, he can find the soft spots of a defense and make some plays, especially when there's so much attention on the 2 outside guys in DK Metcalf and JSN, who has been great all year. You look at that Seahawks wide receiver trio, they have 150 receptions combined, 1,947 yards, 12.9 yards per completion or reception, and 9 touchdowns. 9 of Geno's 12 touchdowns have gone to either JSN, DK Metcalf, or Tyler Lockett. And listen, DK is still the number 1, but JSN is quickly turning into one of the more young, rising stars at the receiver position in the NFL. especially over the last couple weeks, he's been dominant. And him and Geno are clicking at exactly the right time for them, of course, heading down the stretch here, trying to win a division and make the playoffs. And you look at this Jets secondary, DJ Reed's been great. Michael Carter's been a little banged up this year. Sauce has obviously had a really rough season. Down the stretch last week or 2 weeks ago against the Colts, Alec Pierce got behind Sauce. Mills didn't pick him up. Sauce should have just picked him up as opposed to going to the flat. He should have picked up the route down, over top. The guy, and Alec Pierce, his former college teammate, that got behind him. But this defense is going to play a lot of man. So it's going to be up to Sauce. It's going to be up to DJ Reed. Man-to-man against JSN and DK Metcalf, arguably the most lethal right now, 1-2 punch in the NFL. It's going to be a really big challenge. The Seahawks offense, ranking-wise, 12th total offense in the NFL, 28th rushing offense, second passing offense in football, and the 15th scoring offense in football. When you look at the Jets' defense, they're the 6th total defense. They're second against the pass. So statistically, it's the second best passing defense against the second best passing offense. Now, again, I've said this many times. I think the Jets this season are a lot better statistically than really the eye test. I've said that a lot. The eye test to me is a lot worse than the numbers. I think the numbers show they're a lot better than they really are. So we'll see how that plays out tomorrow. Another big story, another big thing to look for tomorrow is really just the Jets' rush defense against this Seahawks rushing offense. It is a Seahawks rushing offense that when you look at Kenneth Walker and you think to yourself, he's a stud. This has got to be one of the better rushing offenses in football. And that hasn't been the case. The Seahawks this season are 28th, have the 28th rushing offense in football. It's only 2 spots better than the Jets. They're averaging 89.1 yards per game. And as a team, they're only averaging 3.9 yards per attempt. Kenneth Walker himself this year only has 493 yards on 129 carries for 3.8 yards per carry, but he does have 7 touchdowns. But the yards and the yards per carry are just not there. Now, this Jets defense, we know stopping the run has been a huge weakness for them. 21st in the NFL in stopping the run, 131 yards per game, or 130.1 yards per game allowed on the ground. Now, 2 weeks ago against the Colts before the bye, they did keep Jonathan Taylor in check for the most part. I know Richardson had a touchdown, but for the most part, they kept him in touch as well, in check as well. I'm sure Michael Clemens tomorrow, there's probably going to be a head-scratching play from him where he doesn't hold his edge on a Geno scramble, which Geno can move actually a little bit more than people give him credit for. But tomorrow's kind of one of those things like what unstoppable object meets unmovable force. It's like one of the worst, or not even that. It's something's got to give really tomorrow. That's not even it. Like something's got to give tomorrow. The Seahawks have struggled this year so badly on the ground, and the Jets have struggled stopping the run. So either this is going to be another game where the Jets defense maybe found something against the Colts. Maybe the second tackling presentation actually did something for Jeff Ulbrich in this Jets defense. Or Kenneth Walker's going to have kind of I don't even want to say vintage Kenneth Walker day because it's not like he's been in the NFL for 9 years and he hasn't been good since 2018. It's his only 3rd season. But Kenneth Walker is going to have like a year 1, year 2 Kenneth Walker game and go out there and dominate. And, of course, they've also got Zach Charbonnet as well. And you even look at Geno, like I said, as a guy that can move a little bit more than people give him credit for. So that's something to look for tomorrow. Now, on top of the whole running, stopping the run, all that stuff brings into the whole offensive line play. The Seahawks offensive line this season has been abysmal, and that's putting it nicely. They've been really, really poor pass protection standpoint and run blocking standpoint. The Seahawks this year have given up 37 sacks. That's 8th most in the NFL and 3rd most in the NFC. Geno Smith is being sacked around 3 times per game. And he's had 2 games this year where he's been sacked 7 times. And as I mentioned, as a team, they're averaging 3.9 yards per attempt. A lot of the run game struggles have been because of the offensive line. They're not physical enough. They're not downhill enough. They don't win their one-on-one reps in the trenches. They have lost the trench battle a lot this season. A lot. Especially from a pass protection standpoint. And that's something that's going to be interesting to see what happens tomorrow with the Jets. This is a defensive line that is really, really like taken away from talent in terms of you've got Michael Clemens playing significant reps up front on that defensive line. You've got Javon Kinlaw, who has had an awful season. He's still out there. You've got Leonard Taylor, UDFA. All right, you've had a lot of these guys. Eric Watts, UDFA. Now you've got your Quinn Williams, you got your Will McDonald, Hassan Reddick. Please give me a break with Hassan Reddick. He had one good game against Houston. Has been a non-factor since. He came in 7 games in. Hassan Reddick's the most. Don't even start with Reddick. So tomorrow is similar again. Like, this is a Jets defense that's had struggles against the run up front, especially on the defensive line. They've gotten beat a lot. They've lost a lot of their one-on-one reps. They've gotten dominated in the trenches. And there's been games where they just don't get home to the quarterback. They're not nearly as dominant. However, the games that the Jets have gotten home against the quarterback, the 2 games where they had 7 sacks against, I think it was 8 and 7. They had 15 sacks combined between the Houston and New England game. In those 2 games, they were facing a banged up Houston offensive line with a lot of moving pieces. And in that game against New England, they were facing a banged up New England offensive line with a lot of moving pieces. Seattle this season up front, they've dealt with some injuries, and they've also dealt with a lot of mix and mash and moving pieces. Lincoln Tomlinson, former Jet, is out there. And we talked to Bryce Coots on Wednesday about that, and he says, yeah, he's been about what he was with the Jets, which is not very good at all. So he could be a potential matchup, especially for Quinnen in that interior to take advantage of. So we'll see what the Jets defensive line brings to the table tomorrow. They've shown to have success. They've proven success. They've shown that they can have success against offensive lines that struggle, offensive lines with a lot of mixing and mashing and very little chemistry. Houston, New England, Seattle the same way. Do we see that tomorrow? It'll be interesting. But if we do, definitely potentially a recipe for success there for the Jets. Now, by the way, since we're at this point in the season, we've got to obviously take a look at the mock or the NFL Tankathon. Jets right now, currently going into this week, are 6th in the NFL from a 6th pick right now in the NFL draft if the season would to end right now. Teams in front of them, Giants, Raiders, Jags, Patriots, Panthers, Jets, they're at 6. So we'll see how that all plays out here. For those of you on the tank train, obviously a loss will help a lot. For those of you on the win train, a loss will hurt that. For those of you like me, I'm just broken. So I'm just kind of watching emotionless at this point. I don't even know what to feel. I just want to see all I want to see tomorrow and the rest of the season is at least if we're gonna lose, can we do it maybe like pretty or somewhat? I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. Can we see a 40-yard bomb to Garrett tomorrow? Can we see an interception tomorrow? Can we see some fun things? Can we see like Breece Hall have a huge carry? Like Breece have one of his like 60-yard bombs like he did previously, or we saw him earlier in the year against Buffalo have that big 40-yard run, 42-yard run. But can we see him finish that? I just want to see something to at least, we're all, I mean, if you're sitting there watching a 3-8 Jet team, you're wasting your time. But at least if you're going to waste your time, at least it'd be a little bit more enjoyable than a 10-yard offense where you don't get a first down until 2 minutes left in the second quarter. Can we get a first down? Hey, ever thought of this? Can we go down and score a touchdown on our first drive? Can we see some of that? I don't know. That's just me. That's where I'm at. I'm so broken. I'm so tired of watching like boring football. If you're going to lose, can we at least see some, I don't know, excitement? Can we see like a flea flicker and just chuck it deep or something? I don't know. Something like that. Or at least if we try a trick play and it fails miserably, at least we can get a laugh out of it. As opposed to just sitting there and watching the team go 3 and out. That's boring. That's terrible. No fun in that. Not that there's really much fun in watching your team fail like a flea flicker when you're 3-8, but you get the point. Prediction for this one, I'm taking the Seahawks. I know a lot of Seahawks fans. I know there's a lot of people that believe this is a trap game for the Seahawks. You look at the odds. You look at, again, ESPN Analytics matchup predictors giving the Jets well over a 50% chance to win this one. So a lot of people are telling you, the stats are telling you, the numbers, all that, odds are telling you Jets might win this game. This could be a trap game for Seattle coming all the way to the East Coast. Never an easy thing to do, especially where they're at with their season and the games that they're coming off the Arizona game, heading into another Arizona game next week, where they're at in their season. It does scream trap game. And I'll be honest, if I was a football fan right now, or if I was a Seahawks fan right now, I would be 100% feeling a trap game, because we've seen the Jets be in this situation sometimes where it feels like a trap game. But I think the Seahawks win. 23-17 is my pick for tomorrow. I think they win. I think they do enough. I think this is another game for the Jets. The Jets just don't know how to win right now. They're a bad football team that does not know how to win. I think this is another game for the Jets where they maybe get off to either a slow start or they start strong and they're up, 10-0. And then as the game kind of goes by, offense gets stagnant, defense starts to struggle. All of a sudden you look up and it's like 20-17. They'll kick a field goal late or something. Jets will have a chance and it won't go anywhere. It's going to be one of those games where you kind of watch the whole game. They're like winning and then they're not late, or they're losing the whole game. Then they come back and then they mess up late, whether it's a turnover, whether it's a penalty, whether it's a failed drive, whether it's the defense up. The Jets will do something like they've done all year to find a way to lose, because that's what bad teams do. They find ways to lose. And that's what I expect to see tomorrow. So we'll be back tomorrow right after the game, as always. Thank goodness, all 1:00 games from here on out. So that's at least a positive. We can watch the game, do the post-game show, be done by 5, and then enjoy the rest of our football Sunday at that point. So we'll talk to you guys tomorrow right after the game. Stay tuned. A lot more content coming your way. As always, JETS, 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 Jets. Thanks for tuning in.